me. I'm from Original Art by Samantha. I do watercolors mainly. My health kind of has intruded in that a little bit, so I thought this was another way that I can do something without having uh, to actually be painting, which I have to be limited on a little bit. So, and I always find it interesting how artists get their start, like how long they've been doing it, because there is a wide range of that out there. You know, some people don't start till they're older. So I started doing this, and this will be my second one. So Wendy's gonna kind of just tell her just a tidbit about herself, and then we're gonna talk about her art.
All right. I'm not exactly sure what I should share or, cut me off if I get long-winded.
Sure.
But I'm Wendy. My handle is Wendess, and that's my business name because as an artist, Wendy Smith is, there's a lot of Wendy Smiths out there that are artists, so I chose another name to be my studio name. So Wendess is kind of how I do all my business under that. And that was a nickname given to me by someone who was like father to me. And so I really liked it. He used to call me Miss Wendess. And so it just kind of stuck.
That's
Anywho, I don't wear glasses, but I wear reading glasses to read the comments. It kind of messes with my eyes. So I've been painting for about 27 years. I started in college, and we'll probably talk more about that. I live in Minnesota, and it's getting cold here, and so that has its ups and downs, but that means that my art fair shows have come to an end. So that means I get more time in the studio and a little less time out showing it. I don't know what else to say because some of it I'm probably going to answer questions later.
That's perfect. Just a little introduction. Yeah. So
I'm married and have 2 cats. How about that?
You have 2 cats, you said?
2 cats, and they may end up coming in here at some point.
Gotcha. And I know there's the one that I always see in there. I can't remember her name now. I think.
Well, there's 2 that are in here a lot. So the blue-eyed one, she's kind of white cream color. That's Willow.
I usually hear her.
The fluffy brown one is Gypsy, and she's got a little bell.
I think it's Gypsy. That often.
Well, they're both in here all the time. So
Gotcha. There's one that I've been on your lives a couple times where they just pop in and I don't see them. I just hear them meowing.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Willow is usually more quiet, but
gotcha. Gypsy's the talker.
She's a talker, and she comes and wants to be held right in the middle of me painting. So.
Oh, of course. See, mine, we have one cat. His name is Bernie, which I think you've seen in some of my videos, but he likes to be very involved in the art process. So he usually gets on top of my art. Or he's right next to it, sitting on some of the stuff I may need. He likes to be hands-on with the art. But I love cats. They're a little bit more manageable than dogs, I think.
And we're gone on that, so that's why we have cats.
Yeah. My dog is very needy. I don't know if she's in here. She's not in here because she usually doesn't like something with the phone. Like if it's on lately, even like if I have sound coming from it, she gets freaked out. But she knows when I'm on the phone and she leaves the room. When I used to work, she would, as soon as I would sit at my desk for work in the morning, because I worked from home, she would leave because I was on the phone all day. So she didn't want to hear me. So let's see. And I'm going to refer to my questions a lot because I'm having major memory issues. So that's why I write that stuff down. So you kind of mentioned a little bit about when you started art. So when did you officially know that you loved art and you would be doing it for a while?
Well, that's a hard question because as a creative person, I've been creative my whole life. I can't remember a time I wasn't doing something. As a kid, I drew a lot, but I did a lot of other things. And my dad was a very creative person, so I was always helping him with projects. But when I started college, I knew I wanted to learn how to paint because I had a lot of interest in art, and so I took art and drawing and painting in college. But I will say I didn't really learn how to paint in college. I kind of taught myself. But 1994 is when I started drawing and painting a lot in college, and that's kind of when I knew I really loved it. I didn't do a lot of that in high school.
Sure.
Because I was really into drugs and that kind of took over my life. But long story short on that, in 95, 96 is when I got clean. So then I needed more of another outlet. And so I think art and creative things really filled that void for me. And that's where I can really get lost.
Right.
Lose myself in my creative thing, and then it takes me out of that headspace. And a lot of people who get involved in drugs and things like I did is because you have a lot of negative headspace and you don't know how to process things, and so you turn to chemicals and whatever. And so long story short, when I got clean, I needed something. So a long time I didn't paint or draw, but I did jewelry, crafts and things like that. But I did start painting in 94. And so there's been some of that through the whole process.
Sure. So that I find, I'll tell you a few reasons I find that interesting, because we have something in common with that addiction aspect. Hey, Ariana. My father was an addict. Now, I mentioned, I think in one of my videos, that he was part of my inspiration for doing art. Unfortunately, art didn't keep him from that. He actually left art because that became his focus. He was in high school, he was very into art, and he won tons of awards. My mom told me he was an amazing artist. When she met him and, got married to him, she didn't know he was an alcoholic. And that was how it started. And he turned into drugs and other things. So he wasn't really in my life a lot. But because of that, number one, I chose to avoid drugs and alcohol. That was in my mind, I didn't want to go down that path like he did, so I avoided it. And number two, he didn't use his talent because he was very talented. Right. And I had that same kind of thing, even though it's also a lot of work, I wanted to not be that way. So I wanted to do something with my art rather than just, for me, I have like depression and anxiety. So I kind of know what you mean about the headspace stuff a little bit. So it's interesting, those kind of things, how you don't learn about them until you're talking to somebody about, how they got involved in it. And you should also be very proud of yourself for getting out of that, because not everybody can do that. My dad never was able to, so,
Yeah, and I have members of my family as well. I had an uncle that was extremely talented, and he drank himself to death. So I know what you mean by people not pursuing their talents and not, doing anything with it when they really could have.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's awesome that that's kind of helped you to get out of that too, because I know for me with my depression and anxiety, it's like you said, it's my safe kind of space. It's my space where all that kind of goes away. I'm able to just focus on something positive. And it's also like the one thing I'm truly confident about myself in. There's not many things I am confident about, but that's one thing I feel most of the time confident about. So you mentioned too in there that you did projects with your father growing up. So what kind of projects did you do with him?
Well, my dad was actually a welder by trade, and my parents raised dogs. And so my dad was always finding things to make for the kennels. I mean, they were breeders. They had many, many dogs. And we definitely won't go there because I know how some people feel about that. But we did things very clean and very on the level, you know, and we were inspected and everything. But my dad was always daydreaming up new ideas on how to make the kennel better. He was very creative and made different things. I wouldn't even know how to explain it, but different ways to let the dogs in and out, different system, just lots of things. And so he was always welding and needed me to help him hold something, and he'd want me to draw up the schematics for it. And so, you know, just stuff like that.
Yeah,
but he was also kind of an inventor and
it's very creative, though. That takes like a totally creative mind. So like, even you just holding that, being a part of it, seeing how he did that, and all of that is pretty
cool. And he taught me like how to measure and how to use a lot of tools. And so I've always liked to work with my hands. So it was no big stretch for me to go into making jewelry. Because I love the tools and working with it. Like, I don't really do jewelry anymore, but I can't get rid of my tools. I love the tools. I have as much fun as the hardware store as my husband does, because I love things used like that. So,
yeah, I actually have jewelry making stuff too. I'm trying to like weave my art into that right now, but that's another story. But I the tool, it's like you have all these things too when you start collecting art supplies, and you're like, you don't want to get rid of
how
them.
Can I use this in another way?
Right. Because you might. And honestly, I've had things where I've let them go, and now I'm like, why did I do that? I could use that now. You know?
Yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation, is can artists actually let go of things? Because I have a really hard time letting go of things because I'm creative, and I think someday I'm going to use this in a mixed media project or whatever. But then when you realize that your studio can't fit another toothpick in it, you gotta
exactly
do something about that.
You have to.
We have, so
you have to let it go sometimes and be like, well, I can get another one if I need it.
Right. Like I said, that's a whole nother conversation. Like, I could talk tonight just about that.
Oh yeah. So now this kind of goes back into what your previous question, where you mentioned about college and that you didn't really learn to paint there. So what kind of college was it that you went to, and what were you going for at the time?
Okay, well, this is actually kind of a funny story, because I went to community college, and that's what brought me to the city that I currently still live in, which is only 45 minutes from my old town. But I came here thinking that I was going to go into architecture. And it's hilarious to me now, because I had no idea what an architect did. And so I was thinking of the rendering of the outside of the house and the interior design aspect, and maybe designing the flow of a house. But I had no idea that it was about where to put the plumbing and all the measurements. And I hate math. Like, I hate math. Like, I gotta, use my fingers if I'm subtracting. And so, when I kind of I got into community college with the pre-architecture program in mind. And when I started through the class courses that they wanted us to take, it was like, oh my, like, it was algebra and it was science and it was all these things that I just
was not
didn't really have any interest in. But there was also, drawing and things like that were prerequisite. Can't say that word, prerequisites. And so I was really enjoying those and hating the other part. And so then it really did start me thinking, I don't think I picked the right, career path for myself here. Right. And so anyway, then I just started taking like every course that they offered as far as artistry. So I took ceramics, and I took drawing 1 and drawing 2 and painting 1 and painting 2 and whatever else I took. It was a long time ago. But so I did learn a lot of skills as far as drawing, how to do contour, how to do shading, a lot of those things that I had basic understanding of from, junior high or whenever I took art. but I did learn quite a bit more, and I did get into drawing practice. That's one thing I remember our teacher harped on us, is that we were supposed to draw every single day in our journals, whether it was junk or not. And I remember having to do like a 30-day self-portrait project.
Oh.
And I do still have a few of those up in a
So you had to
portfolio
draw
somewhere.
yourself every day for 30
Yeah.
days? Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, I would probably hated that.
And so sometimes they were really, really bad. And then sometimes I felt like doing it more. But it's interesting because I did keep several of them. And even years later, I can look back and kind of see like where I was at that day.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't feel good about myself. Or, oh, I was, feeling pretty good that day or whatever. I could kind of tell.
Yeah.
And sometimes they did kind of look like me and sometimes they really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But so that was college in 1994. And then so it was 2 years that I took art classes there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a lot of self-teaching and a lot of books, because that was kind of pre-internet. I'm
Right.
old.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Old. I like when I was
compared to
1994, I was going to high school. I was a freshman because I graduated. No, not even a freshman, because I graduated in 99. But like we didn't have those resources, and I tell people like Ariana, I tell all the time like how lucky she is, because you got YouTube and you've got all these things you can do, and we didn't have any of that. You had books and your teacher.
We had books. Yep. Mm-hmm. And even after, as a kid who grew up in the 80s and into the 90s, even when the internet came about, we didn't really turn to that.
No.
At least I didn't, until a long time after, because I didn't grow up with a phone or a computer or anything like that, where kids do today. And so everything, in some ways, we're kind of behind in that regard, I feel like, compared to the youth. But kind of what I was getting back to was, so I did have some schooling, the basics, and then I did a lot of self-teaching, and I did get some really, really good books that really did teach me how to layer and do some paintings. And that's when my painting really turned. So that was about 2008. And that was Jerry Yarnell books. He was kind of like modern day Bob Ross. And and then actually in like the last 5 years, I started taking a lot of courses and doing some conferences where there was art being taught. And so I did get to learn from Amy Smith, Jill Williams, and I don't know if these are names that anybody would know.
Amy
Erin Brown
sounds familiar to me.
Amy Smith's an abstract artist from, I think she's either North Carolina or Georgia. Okay. And Jill Williams is a watercolor artist from Georgia. Erin Brown, a lot of people know. I took one of his courses, and he's from California. And so I took a lot of different classes. What's that?
What does Erin paint? Erin Brown?
Erin Brown paints, well, he paints a lot of things, but he does acrylics and oils.
Okay.
And he does a lot of trees and spiritual work, and he does he does a vast amount of things.
Gotcha.
Yeah. He's also a worship leader, I believe, and he's put out some albums.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. But so those were some people that I took some courses from, and some local workshops, things like that as well. And then in 2019 through 2020, I did a year-long program, which was basically a really, really intense course online. I probably spent about 30 hours a week working at it. And that was like a 4-year art program wrapped into 1 year.
Yeah, I think that's the main one you had told me about too.
Mm-hmm. And so that would be like going to art college. And that was the Milan Art Institute. And I know that they're doing some heavy duty advertising, so a lot of people probably have heard of them. Course was phenomenal. I can't say enough about it. I learned so much, but I learned things I already knew, but I learned more about it, and I
Right.
learned it deeper, and I got to practice it, and it was really amazing. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I remember you talking about it, and I've looked at it, and it does. It looks like a really awesome program for painting. I've never like actually. I'm pretty much self-taught on my painting. I've never took any type of professional course because I just never could afford it, really.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you got like a wide range of different like in-person instruction from different people, so
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, and
Yeah.
different mediums and everything like that,
Uh-huh.
which I think matters because you can use you might use your medium differently based off of something you learned from a different medium, like with your
Oh yeah.
backgrounds and stuff, because your backgrounds have a very like watercolory type feel to me with your fluid mediums, which
Yeah.
I really love that about your paintings. I just, there's so
Thank
many
you.
aspects, you know, but so go ahead if you had more to add to that. I kind of interrupted you a little bit, I think.
Oh, well, no, that's kind of where I was at.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you feel out of that? If you can think of something that you learned out of that, what was the most important thing that you think you really learned out of all that education? I know that's not on our list, but I just kind of thought of it.
Out of that, gosh, I think what I would say is it's extremely important if you want to be a professional artist, or even if you want to consider yourself the amateur pro level.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to know the um what's the word, like to know the basics of art, not just like I can paint or I can, but just to know like the basics. So um like line and values and kind of like, I always tell people, if you want to learn to paint well, you need to know how to draw. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean you always have to have pencil in your hand and be drawing, but you have to know how, because if you don't know how to draw something round, how do you paint something round?
Right.
It's basic
Yeah.
stuff. So you don't necessarily have to be excellent at drawing, but to know how to render something, and then that translates into painting different. So most of the time I don't really spend a lot of time with a pencil in my hand, but I do know how, and then when you go to translate it into paint, it's going to work better than if you don't know how, if that makes
Right.
sense to me. It sounds kind of basic, but to know those basic things like um values, like light to dark, and not just, oh, I need to have this brighter, brighter, brighter. It's like, well, things will look brighter if you have
Dark
darks
next.
next to them, and
Yeah.
like that hero skiro. And so I mean, I learned a lot of things that, like I said, I already knew them, but I learned it,
Better. Yeah.
learned it, like got it in,
Yeah.
and so now it just kind of makes sense, and I don't have to think about it
Yeah.
because it was talked about over and over and over again.
Right. And
And
I think that is something though, is you may have it taught to you one way by one instructor, but then another instructor teaches it in a slightly different way. And that can
mhm,
just make it kind of click in your brain. That's what I've experienced because I've had kind of that same thing, like with the basics. Like I know I learned all those things before, but then when I did this, it like kind of really stuck in my head better.
mhm. The other thing is I learned actually how to oil paint because in college, they kind of gave us a list. So when I took painting up in college, I thought that I had to do oil. Like I didn't even consider acrylic because I remember watching Bob Ross as a kid and he did oil paint.
Mhm.
So it was like me, I had to do oil paint, right, to make the magic like Bob did.
Right.
And so I went, and they gave us the list, but they never, really told us like this is how you add this to your paint to make it dry faster, or this is how you, um, you know, they just didn't tell us. Like, it was like, here's your solvent, here's your colors that you should have. You know, it wasn't taught. It was really like, here's your list, and now go get your supplies and do it. Because I was at a community college and my instructor was not a painter. I am
Mhm.
not even sure what his medium probably was drawing. And so, you know, I
That's no good.
messed around with oils, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And so in my class with the Milans, I did learn how to use oil paint, and that I didn't have to use gobs of it, and that I could add different things to speed it up, and that I could do glazes. Like, I had no idea what glazing was.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of knew because I had messed around with it with acrylics,
Mm-hmm.
but I had no idea about glazing and things like that. So I learned so much. I can't even probably sum that question up.
No, but what I think what you're saying though is you need those like kind of basic foundations and really understand them. And I totally agree with what you're saying because I learned those in high school. We actually had a decent art program at our high school, and I actually took
Okay.
architecture, architecture, architecture. I want to say texture um, in high school. We had a graphics program where we actually had printing presses and a dark room, and then we had an architecture department as well. And I pretty much had taken
I
every
didn't do any of that.
yeah, I had all of that in high school, but I don't know that I really understood certain things until I went to college for computer animation. And now, computer animation, no, it's not painting, but I was going focused on 3D modeling. So I had to learn how to provide, make things look realistic and do that with textures and lighting and I had to take a polygon and like a square and turn it into something, completely different
Yeah.
shape. So there was a lot, they went really into great detail in a lot of those basics. And it really kind of helped me to understand them better. Um, and with, I'm kind of the same with watercolor though, as you were talking about with oils. Like, I don't remember in high school them really talking much about the process of it. Like, it was just like, here's watercolor and make a painting, and I
Right.
hated it. And then later on, I started to learn, yeah, like you just, here you go, do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned more and more about it. And as I did, now I have all these like little techniques in my, little, drawer of tools, that I can use. Um, so I,
Well, and the thing is if you don't use the skills, you do tend to lose them.
sure.
So, like, I took a watercolor course with Jill Williams, and she was an amazing teacher, and I learned things that I was like, oh, wow, that's how you do that with watercolor. But I haven't done it since I did the class. Did it once, I think, when I got home, and then, I'm an acrylic artist for the most part, and an oil painter too, and watercolor is backwards for me.
Right.
Because you have to plan your lights instead of, add them on top. And so, I haven't used those skills. So now I would have to like look it back up on how to do this.
Yeah, because you're right. It is. It's like the complete opposite. Because I teach beginner courses, and people always struggle with that because they usually come into my class having done acrylic. And it's like, no, you gotta think completely different here because it's completely opposite. And that
It is.
yeah, and it's a struggle for people, but that's really, like, I think a key tip though is learning those basics, like you said. And you don't always have to go to like a 4-year major college. Sometimes it's other ways to learn too.
Right.
So
Well, and there's so many good resources out there, especially if you don't have the money or the time or whatever.
sure.
There's probably tons of courses. I just took I took a little bit of this course, but I didn't finish it. I didn't have the time. I was busy running through, but what is his name? Sorry. I think it's Jed Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
He's an acrylic painter and does landscapes, and he's amazing, and he gives away parts of his course for free. And I was able to listen one night online and work through one little project. And I did learn a new technique. I probably won't use it. But I learned it and it was cool. And I was like, hey, that's a neat way to do it. And so maybe someday I'll see something I want to paint and want to use that technique.
Right.
It's nice to have it in your
bag
tool
of
bag,
tricks.
so to speak.
That's what I was thinking.
But there's artists that give things away all the time, or that offer courses that are really reasonable.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And just because someone has went through a 4-year college doesn't mean that they're any better or anything like that either. And so the self-taught artist, and I was self-taught most of my artistry, or very little training. I was still able to sell my work, and I still developed my style, and so it doesn't mean anything really. Another thing that I did learn out of the course that I find extremely helpful is I already considered myself a professional artist, but because of the course that I did and learned so much, I also learned how to talk about things that I knew about but didn't know how to articulate, and still sometimes don't. But it gave me a lot of confidence to talk to my collectors and my buyers, to explain my process. So I gained confidence. I gained some terminology, so I don't feel like I'm such a, I don't want to use the word ignorant, but sometimes I felt like even though I knew how I did it, I didn't know how to explain it.
Right.
Sometimes I still don't, because sometimes you can't explain things. But there's a lot of value in learning basic terminology. And
sure. Yeah. I think like for me, what you were saying about that terminology, I was the same way, but for some reason for me, I got better at articulating that. Like for me, what you were saying about that terminology, I was the same way, but for some reason for me, I got better at articulating that when I started teaching. Because I think I had to explain.
Yes.
I had to explain the processes and explain it better. And just over time, I could tell I was able to explain it better and teach it a little better. And again, that goes with that repetition, I think, too. But also, I'm always watching other artists. Yeah. And also just when you're watching other artists, like you said, with not having to go to college, because that doesn't you don't need that necessarily. And
no,
just watching people on TikTok, I learned so much. Asking them questions.
Right.
I mean, a lot of stuff I learned with watercolor was by watching people on Twitch at the time, because I didn't know about TikTok, and I don't even know if it was out at that point, but I would ask them questions and they tell me, and I learned more by that. So let's see here. I already know that question. So, and you do art basically almost, it seems like anytime you're not working, you're in your studio, unless you're off the grid, so to speak.
Correct. So I consider myself a full-time artist, but I do still have a full-time day job. So basically, I consider myself working full-time at my art and full-time at my day job. So I have 2 full-time jobs. So most of the time I'm working 60 to 70 hours a week. But when I'm doing art, it doesn't feel like work. But when I'm doing shows, as much as I love interacting with people, and that's fun, that's kind of the work part, because I have to set up my whole booth, and I have to set up the art, and I have to be like kind of on point, talking to people, and trying to make sales without being pushy, explaining, and lots of talking. And so you kind of got to switch in that salesperson mode, and that, not that I'm salesy, but just be on. with people. And then those of you who don't know me, I'm also a ceramic artist a little bit too. And so my husband is a potter and I help him. And so sometimes I get sucked into the pottery. And so then I might go through times where I'm not painting, but I'm still creating. And so, like, all last weekend, I was making ceramic ornaments and little soap dishes and things like that because he's getting ready for a winter market. So I kind of switch into that. I don't throw a whole lot. I can throw on the wheel, and I'm not like great at it like he is, but I can do it. But I prefer to work slab work, which is, you roll out a slab and cut things out, put things together. So I also do some sgraffito, but I haven't done that for a while.
What is that?
That is where you take your clay before it's fired and you put a layer of under glaze. It's a glaze on it. And you actually carve away your design. And then then it gets fired, and then the design that you carved away ends up being, because we use a white clay, it's white, and then I usually do black. So it looks black and white when it's finished.
Okay, I think I've seen that, but I didn't know what it was called. So
yeah,
that's cool. So how do you like working with your husband on pottery projects and stuff? Because I, of course, think that's awesome that you have a partner.
We really love it. Yeah, we really love working together, and we're kind of together but working separately. A lot of times that's kind of what happens, but then we bounce ideas off each other. But even when I'm painting and he's doing that, we still do that, because here at our house, my studio's here and his is kind of around the corner, down the hall, but it's not that far away. And so I can be like, hey, can you come here a minute? Can you look at this? But he is colorblind. So sometimes if it's something with the color, he's, he can't help me. But if it's, but you'd be surprised at things that he can help me with. Because it's not like he doesn't see color. He just sees them differently.
Right.
But he can see value sometimes. And he can see, like, your value isn't right here. And he can't necessarily articulate in those words. But he'll point it out and I'll be like, that's what the problem is. And then he'll come in and he'll be like, what do you think of the form on this shape? And I might be like, oh, I don't really like that shape. Or he hates it and I love it. And so, just bounce ideas off each other. But we work really well together. We actually, our other business is house cleaning, and we both clean separately, but when we started, we worked together. And him and I work really, really well together. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's great, especially because you have another pair of eyes to kind of come in and look at your things. That's one thing. I don't have like a spouse or anybody to do that with me.
Yeah, and that's where you call upon your art friends and you send them a photo or something. Like, what do you think of it?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really, really important to have somebody, even if they don't know much about your medium, somebody you can bounce things off of. Because sometimes we get so in front of it, it's so in our face that we can't even see it anymore.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's why they say, like, if you just don't know what to do, like, put it away till the next day, come back with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Or even leave the room for 10 minutes and go get a Coke or something and just come back with fresh eyes. Because sometimes, or like flip it over upside down, that one is really a great thing to flip something over and look at it, like, especially if you're working, with a photo, flip the photo upside down, flip the painting upside down, because then your brain has to go like into a different spot.
Rethink.
And you can see things that you didn't see because you were like so focused on it that you couldn't even see it anymore.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time. That was something I did learn in the computer animation school, which was, I was only doing it for 2 years. And I never had thought to do that. Like, and now if I get frustrated with something, instead of just throwing it in the closet or getting rid of it like I would have used to do, I just put it away. And then I'll come back to it sometimes maybe a week later and kind of re-look at it. And then I can, like you said, you can see it differently. You can see what might be wrong, what was bothering you about it. or how to do it better, you know, in a different way. So I do that all the time. But let's see, what else was I going to ask you? Oh, I know. So why and when did you start TikTok?
Well, that's a great question. The when part was about, I suppose, about a year and a half ago. I think it was like spring of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly sure why. I think I had just kind of been hearing about it and seeing like people on, I was starting to use Instagram a lot, and I was starting to see some of the TikTok carry over. You know how you'll be on Instagram and you see a video and then you can see the TikTok thing on the corner. And so it looked like there was some fun things that you could do with it, like add little sparkles or whatever. And being a little bit older, I'm not real familiar with technology, so I just kind of started playing with it and didn't think that anybody would ever watch my TikToks. But I and for a long time they didn't. And sometimes I still feel like it's cricket sometimes, but I do it a lot of times more for me. But part of the reason then I really started using it is I was starting to see the value in showing what I was working on or doing a time lapse or talking in front of the camera. And I felt like that was really important to get myself comfortable, because I was never very confident as a person, let alone as an artist. And that has all come with time, and my confidence has grown. You know, when I was a kid and as a young adult, people thought I was extremely shy. And I'm not. It's just that I didn't really come out of my shell. I didn't know how. I came from a small town and didn't have a lot of friends. And I just, you know, I never felt like I fit. And part of that is my personality, because sometimes as artists, sometimes we don't fit, and that's okay. And so I think I kind of did it for me to get out of my shell a little bit and to learn how to talk to people and to show my process. And I kind of did it to hopefully cast a wider net on another audience. So a lot of reasons, I guess. And, you know, I'm slowly gaining more followers and gaining more artist friends. And I've met awesome people like you. And
you too.
I've learned from other people and seeing their TikToks, but I'm still not trendy. Every once in a while I'll do one that I feel like such a dork for even doing it.
I'm the same way. I'll do something and I'm like, it's fine, just do it and see. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work, because as you know, you just never know with TikTok what people are gonna like. Like, one of my videos is me opening a package and it had like 2,000 views on it or some craziness. Yeah. And I'm like, why? I don't. And then I'll post another of the same type of thing, but it'll only get like 20 views. Yeah. So it's very unpredictable. But I think that's a good thing, though, is to kind of get you in a different element to help develop, you know, those skills like that maybe are, I think you're frozen. Oh, there you go. Skills that maybe are a struggle for you, because for me, so when I moved here, I was just getting back into my art, and one of my daughter's friends' moms helped run the local art center. And she's like, well, you should teach a class. And I was deathly afraid of that. I had never taught a class. I was like you. I was shy in high school. I was always the quiet girl. I wasn't very confident in myself. And but I'm also the kind of person that cannot say no. So it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll get back to you. And of course I didn't. And then she just kept asking. And then so finally I did it. And it really, teaching classes helped to bring me out of my shell, because I had to talk to people. And they had to look at me and look at my art. And, you know, what if they don't like me kind of thing. And I mean, essentially
Right.
TikTok's the same thing, only it's a much bigger audience.
It is and it isn't, because you might have followers or watchers,
Well,
you might not.
that's true.
And
That's
so that, but it kind of takes the pressure off because there's not someone right there like looking at you.
yes.
And so you can be as dumb as you want on your video, and then you can choose not to post it.
And you can re-record.
And, right. You can re-record. You can't do that in a live setting.
Oh no. Oh no. That's why I think that's
Yeah,
why
I did
TikTok
some
wasn't as scary for me in that part of it. Because it was more that I had to look at myself when I was doing it. I didn't like that
Oh,
part.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard part for me. But so what is something that you've gotten out of TikTok since starting it? Because you've been doing TikTok a good bit longer than me. I've only been on here since about June.
Since when?
June of this year.
June this
Yeah.
year. Oh, well, I guess I have. But the first, quite a few months, I didn't post a whole lot, and I wasn't getting much interaction. And so, it was a slow process for sure. I'm just responding to somebody here quick to say hi. And thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I guess the greatest thing that I've found on TikTok would be the community. Like, artists support other artists, and maybe we're not buying from each other, but we're supporting each other, we're liking each other, we're interviewing each other, we're communicating, we're talking about our art. I've even met, I don't know if he's still watching, but Nick, he's from Minnesota, and I'm hoping to actually connect with him at some point. I was going to be at a show kind of near him, and then I ended up being sick and not being at the show. So sorry if you came, Nick. I wasn't there. But, just kind of, I haven't actually met anyone in person yet, but I have, noticed that there's a really good community here. And I love that, especially amongst painters, because I've noticed I've been doing art shows, art fair circuit for like 12 years now. And there's not, there is some of that, but there's so much competition, and it's like, we don't need to compete with each other because we're different, and just because you do a landscape and I do a landscape, we don't do it the same way. And somebody's going to connect with yours. Someone's going to connect with mine, and they may not like each other, but it's okay. Like, it takes everybody, and everybody sees the world different. And so I love that about TikTok, is that we're kind of all out there in that same market, but there's not the competition feel.
Right.
So I like that community. And I know that there's some of that, and we all, I wish I had as many followers as so-and-so or something. But, there's a great community here. And I feel like, there's going to be ugly stuff everywhere because people get dark and people get ugly. But generally speaking, people are good. And I see so many people giving away free information, loving on each other. I can't remember her name. I can picture her face, but she just had a post where she's done this a few times, where she's like, hey, do you know an artist who's like underrated? Like, post their name here and we'll give them a shout out. It's like, how awesome is that? Like, you're promoting other artists on your own page. That's pretty cool. But then I saw something posted by her that she had some ugly stuff come up on there, and she had to pull it for a while. And it's like, really? Like, why does somebody have to ruin that?
Right. Yeah.
But there's always going to be some of that. So.
Right. Yeah. I think that's just the world we live in now, is because of the internet, you're going to see a little bit more of that ugly stuff than you would just in person, but it's always out there. There's always people that, if they went to a museum and saw your piece, they might say that is just crap, and not like it,
You don't hear it.
Yeah, exactly. You just don't hear it. And unfortunately, with the ways of the internet, you hear it or you might see it. But I agree. I think there's like a lot more positivity with the community here, and everybody wants to support each other. And if those people aren't like that, then just don't follow them. Go on to the next person, you know. But yeah, the community is just great because, like, I've met you, and I've met, you know, Parkinson's T-shirts, who does something completely different, and Ariana, she's in Jamaica, so you know, you get to
I didn't know she was in Jamaica.
Yeah, she lives in Jamaica, so you know, you get to meet all these people from all walks of life, all different type of mediums, and talk to them. And because I think that's something that is such a great resource, is just being able to talk to another artist, you know, to bounce ideas off of, or ask, you know, how did you do that, because they want to try that, because that's why I bought those fluid mediums, you know. So
I feel
really
like
great.
That was one thing I got out of my course too, and I've learned it's so important, like, to have other artists who, like I said, you know, even if it's a person who's maybe not in the same medium or whatever, you have some of the same training or the same ideas or something, and can share. You know, it's great.
Right.
It's great to share.
Yeah.
And have someone stuff. It's good.
Yeah, and it gives, like, for me, I moved here like 7 years ago to West Virginia. And I don't know anyone here, and it's very hard to meet people here as an adult. It's very hard to meet new people. And I haven't done a lot of art markets. So art markets are still kind of a new thing for me. Like I did get in that store. So I haven't met a lot of people that way either. So having
and that's why it's awesome. People like here on TikTok or online or whatever, like, you can connect, you know, so now you know me, and you know, hey, Wendy does art fair, so I know who to go to if I have questions.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's awesome about it, is because if people don't have that local art community they can turn to, they have it here, you know, and they have other resources for learning how to do things. And then it's almost even better because it's not competition at all. You know, I'm not going to be competing with you out there in Minnesota, you know, kind of thing. But I mean, I don't think
and here's something that, you know, on the same line, but kind of getting off track. You know, we all had to start somewhere. Whatever we do, we all had to start somewhere. And so, as an artist, don't ever be afraid to ask for help or to ask somebody. And don't be afraid you're going to sound stupid, because I'll tell you what, when it was like 2008 or whenever it was that I finally did my first outdoor show, I went on a scouting trip before I went out. And I went to an art fair and I asked people, like, hey, what are you using for weights, and what is important on this tent, and how do I get into shows? And I've had people ask me those questions at shows, and I never feel bad giving them that information, because that's how I did it.
That's a great.
And the really cute thing is that one of the ladies that I very first talked to, I just found her at a show. We're still friends. Like, we actually became friends when I started doing art shows, and we were just talking about, when did we first meet? And I was like, when I came scouting and asking you questions about your weights.
And I think that's part of why I've never done them before either, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get into them. I didn't know any of that stuff. So,
well, who does? Like, you don't just wake up one day and know how to do it.
And I know that now, but as a younger artist, I had like no one to turn to for that when, you know, TikTok wasn't really a thing. And that's another aspect of that, is like, if you didn't know anyone, you're kind of just stuck in your own little space, you know. So especially for someone who's shy too. I'm not like that anymore, but back then I was. So. So did you have anything else you wanted to add to any of that, or
not to that in particular?
Okay. So let's see. We kind of already did, I guess. Okay, we'll go with it, I guess. We kind of answered this, but what advice would you give to other artists? having trouble talking today. Maybe.
Well, I could probably give a ton of advice.
Sure.
But number one top advice would be do not quit ever. Like, unless you start hating what you're doing, like, do not quit. And part of the not quitting is unfortunately developing a thick skin. So we talked a little bit about how nasty people can get and whatever. Developing a thick skin. So we talked a little bit about how nasty people can get and whatever. There's going to be days where you feel like you're terrible, but you can't give up, because the only way to get better is to keep doing it. You're going to hear negative things. And unfortunately, you're probably going to hear more negative things online, any kind of online social media, than you would in the real world. But even in the real world, even at a show, you'll hear things. People think that you can't hear them because they're on the other side of your tent. It's like, these aren't walls. Like, I can hear you.
Right.
Yes, your 5-year-old could do it just as well as me. You know, you'll hear those comments. It's like,
always love that.
Really? And if you're having a rough day, you can take those things really personally. But you can't give up. Like, you have to. If you have to, you bawl your eyes out, and then the next day you get up and you go, I'm going to do better, or I'm going to do this in another way. And you just got to keep going. And so you just don't give up. And if you get stuck, find somebody you can learn from. Pull up a YouTube video, take something that you've done and, like, do it another way. You know, like, maybe you're not very good at watercolor. Maybe it's not your medium. Try something else. Pick up the pencil. You're not great at that, or you don't love it. Pick up the paintbrush, pick up clay, whatever it is. The other thing, I think my other major advice, and this kind of goes along with something I learned in this program too, is you need to figure out what works for you. Because as an artist, we try on all these different hats, you know, like, we try drawing and we go, we try clay and we go, we try painting, you know, whatever. So you got to find the medium that fits you, but then within the medium, you have to find your personality. And I'm not talking about your painting style or like whether you do people or birds. I'm talking about finding your personality. So this is one thing that I learned is I like to work fast. I like to, like, bang it out. I like to work big. If I could, I would paint murals, like, all the time. I love painting big. I like painting fast. I like, if I could, and I don't do this in my own studio because I'd have to clean it because it would drive me nuts, but I like just getting in there, right? And so I've learned that these little tiny things, they are not me. They drive me crazy. I feel confined. So I have to paint bigger. So when I say I'm working on something small, it's like 11 by 14, 8 by 10. That is small for me. Right. If I'm doing these little things, which I do sometimes, but I'll paint larger things on them, because if I were to do all this little teeny tiny, it would drive me nuts because it's just not my personality. Sure. I'm a fast person. Like, I do house cleaning for a living. We used to have employees, I ran circles around them. I am a fast-paced person when it comes to most things. And so, like, for me to do this little putsy work, like, I love that kind of art. I admire somebody who can do that. Like, I can't. And so it's funny that I can do that with clay, because I cannot do that with painting. But with clay, it's like I relax and carve these little things. But when I paint, that is just not my personality. And so you got to find, like, your personality in what you do. So I can admire other people's work, but understand that it's not the way that I should be creating for me and my personality. So I guess that would be, you know, and it took me a long time to figure that out. And I'm still kind of figuring that out. In fact, in school, we had to do this quiz, not a quiz, but it was kind of like a quiz. And we had to figure out, like, our personality type with art. And I kept coming back that I was like pop art artist, and I could not see that about myself. I was like, I hate pop art. How can I be pop art? But now, like, the more I'm painting, I'm like, well, that is kind of pop art. And like, I did this one painting that I posted a while ago. She almost looks like she's singing. I'm looking at that. I'm like, that's totally like pop art. And here I'm like seeing it now, but it took me like a long time. And it's like, I don't do pop art like the Campbell's soup can, but in a way, it is kind of considered pop art. And now I'm like kind of okay with it. Even
Right.
like some of my animals and stuff, like they're probably more leaning towards a pop art. And so they're not going to appeal to everybody.
Right.
And that's okay too. And that's, you know, part of not just having a thick skin, but learning that your work is not going to appeal to everybody, and that that's okay. Because if there are 4 personality types in the world, you're one of them. That means that 3 of the other 4 may not care for what you do. So what? That means that a fourth of the population does like it, you know?
Right.
And flip the script in your head that who cares about the other 3 then? Let's make what the other one likes, you know? And it can be tough because you might see this person who's doing something that really just blows your mind because you can't work that way. And you wish you could. And you try to emulate it, but it's just not you.
Right.
And it isn't going to work.
Yeah. No, I think the 2 things you said kind of go hand in hand, the never stopping and finding your personality, because that's something like I feel like I'm still kind of developing, and I feel like I'm getting there but not quite there. And as you try different things, as you experiment and get messy and keep painting and drawing or whatever it is you do, you kind of start to feel out that personality part and learn what
Well, you
is
really
not
do.
you. Yeah.
Like, I've been painting for 27 years now. That doesn't mean I painted 100 paintings a year for 27 years.
Right.
But through those years, I was experimenting and learning and learning. And, you know, I feel like artists should always be experimenting and learning, right? I mean, as artists, we shouldn't be in a box. Like, we're creative. Like, if you're stuck in a box and just in this rut and you're painting the same thing over and over and over again, if you want to be doing that, awesome, because sometimes that happens.
Right.
But when that thing wears off, when the shininess wears off, maybe it's time to try something else.
Exactly.
Or like at least switch for a while and then come back to that thing. And so I forgot where I was going with that. But just, you know, like, I think we should always be learning and try new things. And, you know, I don't want to make it sound bad if somebody just loves painting a rose over and over and over. Like, awesome. Okay. You know, like, if you truly still love it, do it. But I sometimes look at it and I think, God, what if they did a peony or an iris? You know?
Right.
Like,
right.
I think that, and you know, this is a whole nother conversation we can have, but I think artist collectors, this is kind of funny. And I know I'm going off on tangent, but artist collectors sometimes get so used to what you're doing that if you do something else, they get all like sad about it. And it's like, really? Like, do you want me to be stuck? So I did like the series of trees forever. And I love trees and I still will do trees. But I took a break and I'm doing a lot of other things. And then I have people come up and like, oh, you don't have any of your trees. It's like, no, but I got all these awesome people and animals.
Right. I think like, that happens a lot with musicians too. Like, you'll see where musicians, like big bands, will change their style up a little bit, and then you have all these fans that go against them. But I've heard them say it. Like, what, you want me to do the same thing all the time? It gets boring. Like, we gotta try different things, and I think it helps.
Well, and where's the artistry? You know?
Yeah.
Like, as an artist, our main thing is that we are creative. So I can paint a tree in blue, purple, yellow, green, black, you know.
Right.
Okay, that runs its gamut. Then I can start painting it with leaves, without leaves. You know what it's like?
Right.
At some point,
You've done it.
my creative juices are going to need something else, you
Exactly.
know.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I know
I
exactly what
get
you
it, because I know when you like something, you want to gobble up more of it. You know,
mean.
like you found this new song by this new artist, and you're like, oh my God, I got to hear the rest of their music. But then there'll suddenly be this other song that sounds like somebody else, and you're like, huh?
Right.
I
Right.
get it.
Yeah.
But as a creative person, we need to keep our juices flowing. And sometimes that means completely switching everything.
Right. Yeah. Changing, trying different things, trying different
Doesn't mean
mediums
it won't
even.
come back.
Yeah,
We might
exactly.
cycle back around.
Or it might be incorporated in a different way, like,
Mm-hmm.
You got trees in with your animals and stuff. It's not like you're
Right.
saying I hate trees
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. I would never say that.
I'm against trees. But yeah, I think that's a good thing you bring up, because I've never gotten into that aspect where, except for I do have one lady who's bought several of my paintings, but they were all gifts. I think one might have been for her, and then the other two were gifts. So, but yeah, I don't know. For me, as somebody who's trying to collect other artists' work, I'm totally mishmash on that, because I like it all. Like, I'm like, oh, that's so cool how he did that, but then something will be totally opposite, and I'll love that. But maybe some people.
Well, this is kind of my first year truly running into this,
Mm-hmm.
because I've switched so many times, and now I've made such a drastic switch. But we had 2020 off from art shows,
Right.
so I had more time to paint
Explore.
than to show. Right. But I also went through my artistry program with Milan Arts Institute, and I learned so many skills. And then it was like, it gave me the confidence to paint things that I had always wanted to paint, but I was scared to. So like, I used to want to paint people, and I still like wish I could paint people better, but as you do, you're going to get better. Right. So I got to remember, I'm still a beginner at that. But I used to want to do that. So I did them in silhouette style, because you didn't have to be able to paint a nose. You just painted
You
a
have
black
to do the features.
head, and so you could tell a story, but you didn't have to put any features in. So I didn't have to be embarrassed or whatever. Right. And so now, like, I feel like, okay, I'm confident. I can paint this. It still may not turn out exactly like I want, but I can translate what I'm trying to say. And so I have the confidence. So, before maybe I wanted to paint a bird, but I do a little silhouette bird because I was afraid to paint a bird.
Right.
And now I'm not afraid to do those things. So, some collectors will go with you as you grow, and some will fall away. And that's okay too, because you'll gain new collectors, new patrons, whatever. And yes, so you got to do you. That's the number one advice too. I have multiple number one advice. You got to do you. I mean, if you're not being true to yourself, then you're not really being a true artist. Like, you're just emulating someone else and being a copycat. Exactly. Like, and the only way to really be you is to keep following the bunny trail, so to speak, because I will have an idea for a painting of a lady, and then I'll do a lady, but then I don't know what else to do. So then I just put it aside, and then maybe I get going on something else. And then I go, oh, like, this will work with that, and you just kind of follow those trails.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a process, I think. And, I don't think most artists ever stop, like, that exploration part or that learning part.
I hope they don't.
Yeah, I don't either, because it's so interesting to see, the different things people do and create, and in different ways. And my art has, like, developed so much. Like you said about the personality, I learned I'm a painter. Like, I'm not a drawer. That's all I did was draw. And then once I started painting, so I know I'm a painter, And then it's narrowing it down from there. But, you know, you have to keep doing that stuff and keep going and learning and growing and don't stop is super important, because I did that for a long time. When I had my kids, I stopped. Like, just totally stopped.
The important thing is to remember, too, that not having time because you're busy with kids or something isn't the same as stopping, you know. But trying to find time for yourself or what you love when you have all these other priorities can be really difficult. Now, see, I don't have kids, but I still have other priorities in my life, like my cleaning business or maybe church or my husband or making dinner. Like, there are nights where I just don't want to freaking make dinner. Like, I just want to go in the studio. Like, just, I don't know, eat a piece of cheese and let's go to the studio. You know, whatever. let's move back. But I feel like, you know, we have to eat, and that's important too, and like to eat healthy. And we don't go out much, and we don't eat processed food really. And so, you know, it takes longer. But there are times where I wish I could just be like, oh, you know, like, could we just throw in a frozen pizza? But we don't eat frozen pizza. So, you know, so you gotta take time to do those things. So, like, if you have kids, you gotta feed them and take care of them.
Fortunately, I'm over that aspect of it. They're older now, and now it's my health that I have to deal with. But
and that's, you know, the point. Like, sometimes there's going to be other priorities, and you just have to prioritize. But that's not the same as stopping or quitting.
Right.
And, you know, we all have times where I really feel like the creative process is a season too. You know, like, I go through seasons where I just came off this high of like, go. Like, I was literally like work. Like, I didn't have time to do anything, like quick post my TikTok, get it over with, like keep going.
Right.
Because I was on art fair cycle, work cycle, create, repeat all summer long. And that came to a close, and now it's kind of like that.
Relax.
Oh, I can breathe. But then it's like, okay, how far do I allow myself? Because when I'm in that cycle, it actually keeps me like rolling. And so taking a break almost feels like stopping. And that is almost scary to me, because I find that pressure is kind of a good thing for me, but at the same time, you can't operate under that forever, right? Like, nobody can do that forever.
No.
And so I'm like, okay, it's okay to not go in the studio. Like, I had kind of fallen sick. I just had a regular cold, but I'm in my 40s, so a regular cold can kick my butt, you know, like it didn't when I was 20. And so I just don't have the bounce that I used to have.
Right.
And so, you know, I realized, like, it's okay to sit and watch TV, you know, and, you know, so you have to allow yourself cycles and times, but that's not the same as quitting or stopping. So
no, and sometimes it's like what I've found with myself is, because I've really struggled through this whole health issue, because I was like I was painting all the time right before I got sick. I was teaching classes. I was like loving it. I was hoping to quit my job and just paint. And then I got sick. And I couldn't feel my fingers. And then I was like, oh my God, what if I can't ever paint again? Well, I'll have to teach myself to use my left hand. That's what was in my head, is I'll just teach myself to use my left hand. And then now where I just get tired, I'm like, it's okay. You have to rest. Just do it when you can do it for as long as you can. You can't keep up with Wendy's pace of painting, because I see that.
Neither can Wendy.
Yeah, I see these other artists, you know, they're putting out a new painting every day, or, you know, something different all the time. And I'm like, I just can't keep up with that. And I actually saw someone on TikTok that said, I had to learn that's not my pace, and I can't help that. And you just have to go at your own pace. So, you know, it's kind of a part of that stopping, but not stopping. Like, I have.
And learning your personality.
Right.
Because for me, for a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
I can put out a new painting every day for a period. And then
you burn out.
You know, I gotta like, well, you burn out, but it's like, it depends on what I'm painting. You know, like I could paint poppies. You know, I love poppies.
Yeah.
I could paint a poppy probably every single day. But I couldn't paint a portrait or an animal portrait or something. I couldn't do that every single day. And not do it well or finish it, because a lot of times I will post my acrylic pieces and it looks like I'm churning out a lot, and I am, but then that goes on for a cycle, and then I stop and I go back and I do oils on them. So then when I get to the oil part, I'm actually painting that painting almost again, you know, over the top. And so it's like, yeah, for the acrylic phase, I can keep cranking them out, but then I stop, go back, and then do the oils. But, you know, if you're only following someone on TikTok and maybe they're posting a painting that they did a month ago, but they're posting it again, and if you're not following them like every, you're going to think, oh, they got another new piece, you know?
Yeah.
So unless you're really following and realizing, oh, that's something they did and now they did more work on it.
Yeah.
You know, you get a false sense.
Oh, yeah, for
like
sure.
Saying,
and I think what you said about it being like a part of your personality, I think that's true too, because I've learned that even like I could paint a lot more previous to now, but still it wasn't at that pace. You know, I took more time, and I'm doing a different medium. You know, I'm doing watercolor, so
that's just it. I mean, if you're doing just oil painting and you're doing a large one, like you're gonna be working on a piece for a long time. If you're doing acrylic, well, you run a hairdryer over it and you keep moving. But then, you know, as a watercolor artist, sometimes you can dry it, or you have to sit and wait because of whatever effect you want.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's certain things you can speed up and certain things you can't.
Sure.
So.
And sometimes I will I'm like, I just want to paint. So I'll sit down and maybe paint a background with no intention of what I'm going to put on it, you know, or I might start the animal, but then I'm not sure what to do with the background, which I've tried to learn that process a little better. But, yeah, I think, you know, everybody has a different pace, a different personality, a different style. And we all have to remember that. That's that, I guess, that imposter syndrome everybody talks about, you know, that you don't have to be like everybody else.
Well, and I said this earlier, and I'll say it again. It really comes down to personality type, you know, because one of the things that they taught us in our art school classes were that we should plan ahead, which is always a good thing, and that we should, they wanted us to come up with source material. So you create your own source material for your painting. So, for instance, this piece, the one that I'm kind of currently working on with the dove and the, I can't get it in there, the girl.
Yep, there it is.
Okay, so they would want me to create this source on like an iPad or something, and put the dove in, put the girl in, kind of fiddle with my backgrounds. And I did that, and I created a bunch of sources. And for me, this is my personality again. I found that by doing all that on an iPad, when I would go to paint it, I was like, what's the point of making the painting? I've already done it.
Yeah, I didn't like
but I already put it all together and can see what it looked like, right?
So
for me, that was the creating part. And so it totally took out the fun of actually painting it. And so I found that for me, the way that I like to do my sources is I will, like, I have a vision in my head of this girl with her hands out and this bird. So I find images online that fit with my picture I have in my head, but different pictures. So like I've got the girl with her hands out, I've got the dove, but I don't put them together. I put those sources up because those are the things that I need to see to paint them. I need to see hands. I can't just whip out a hand. I got to see it.
Yeah.
And I got to see what that dove looks like to paint it because I use reference photos. But for me, 2 reference photos of those 2 things. But if I were to sit on the iPad, put it all together, make it actually look like the painting, and then turn around and paint it, bores me to tears, and I feel like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So, but some people love that system, and they do that, and that's cool. And it's neat to have learned how to do it, because that way, if I painted something and I just can't figure out how to put that bird in, I can put the bird in a digital way and move it around and find where it needs to go.
Right.
And so I have used it kind of backward that way. But like, I did it the way they wanted us to do it, and I was just like, this so is not me. Like, I couldn't stand it.
Right.
And it made me not want to paint.
Yeah. And I think maybe that too is partially the fact of our generation, of that not being something we use in our art process from the beginning, maybe, because I don't particularly do that either. And I don't know that I would like that, because like I'll do what you do. I'll pull reference photos for whatever I'm creating, and then I might have an idea of the background in my head, but then that is more where I play, is with the background. Yeah. So
and me too, and that's kind of my process,
right?
Because I love to. And I did this actual painting that I'm currently started. I did a different process, and I'm kind of like, maybe I can, because I don't want to be stuck in that process all the time. But one of my processes with all the drippy backgrounds and stuff that you say you love is like, I like to just kind of, when I do the background part, just kind of let it run and let it drip and spray paint it and do all that, and then kind of go from there. But then sometimes I kind of wish they would have planned it better. So, it's all about learning.
Yeah.
But that's part of the process that I love. And like, if I don't exactly know what I want to paint and I just want to paint, then I just grab those colors that I love and just let them run and drip, and then figure out later what I'm going to put on there for the subject.
Yeah.
But that's the fun part. And that's what I love about abstract work, which I don't do tons of, but I did a whole series of. And with the abstracts, I didn't have to work around that subject matter.
Right.
And so that was a lot of fun to just work outside that.
Yeah.
But abstracts are way harder than what they appear.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Like, I started.
And that's another
whole nother conversation. So, but I think we could have lots of whole nother conversation.
I think we could, yeah.
About this. It could go on and on. So here's a good question for you. What is your favorite, like, special tool in your arsenal, meaning a physical tool? Like, is that, whether it's a medium or a palette knife or a certain kind of brush or whatever it is, what is one of your top tools?
Well, it sounds corny, but my top tool would be my fingers, because I love getting my hands in there. I love smearing paint around. Okay, but if we're talking about an actual tool, I would probably, and then next one really isn't a tool either, spray bottle, because I love dripping paint.
No, that's...
My favorite tool is probably paint brushes, and specifically a filbert brush. Okay. And I never used to use filbert brushes, and now that I use them, I'm like addicted to them.
Do you have a filbert you can show us?
Yes. They're a flat, round type of brush. I have a whole bunch of them. If I can find a decent one this one is, hold on. They're kind of beat up. But a filbert is,
they're well loved.
They're essentially a flat this way, but they have the rounded top. So this kind of filbert too. So they're kind of flat, but they're round. So they're not a round brush where they're round and go to a point. They're round on the top and they're more flat. And so they work really good for petals, because when you pull a petal, you're starting with a rounded shape. Or when you're doing the planes of a face, you have that rounded tip and not like this flat square,
line. It's a little
part.
softer.
Although I do like that too. But yeah, they're soft. So that's probably my favorite brush.
Well,
So,
yeah, and I thought that's what they were, but I was like, I'm not 100%, so just as a reminder,
well,
because I don't
it's
use
a
them as
valid
often.
question because not everybody knows the shape or the name of the brush. Like if you said a flat size 10, I'd be like, I don't know, is that big or little?
I know
I
what a
use them all
flat
the time,
brush is, but I sizes, don't even.
Right.
No way.
But I used to never use a filbert, and then when I started using them, I'm like, oh my god, how did I ever live without this?
Right. I'm like that with different things. A spray bottle is probably would be one of my favorite tools too, because you can do so much with it by spraying paint, especially watercolor, because it really just does awesome stuff with the paint. But
well, and as you know, I use a lot of liquid acrylic types, like fluid acrylics.
Mm-hmm.
But I also use like acrylic inks, and so they run a lot like watercolor, so they spread out and kind of do their own thing, and that's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then if we were to get into, specific things, I love my markers. Posca markers are awesome.
We could probably also do a whole conversation on tools, right?
And art supplies in general. I'm pretty much drunk. I could do my own show on art supplies. For sure.
I understand that because I have closets full of stuff. So,
well, if you missed the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about. I come from an addict type background. I'm an addict, so now my addiction's art supplies.
But it's a healthy addiction.
It's a much healthier addiction, but it certainly can still be expensive, and that's why I sell my work. It's because I got to pay for art supplies. Mm-hmm. I kid you not. Like every painting I sell, I think I run to the art store, or get online or something.
There's always I always have a list of things I need to get, like art supplies. That's probably the problem with having an Amazon wish list, is being able to save things that you want. So yeah.
Yeah, and then with my husband being a potter, we're buying ceramic supplies and we're buying, painting supplies. Mm-hmm. It's crazy around
Endless. Here. So
endless, yes.
As a closing, do you want to? I didn't think of this before, so I'm just throwing this out there. If you don't want to do it, you don't. But do you want to give us a tour of your studio?
Oh, sure. It's totally a mess,
that's
but
okay.
I know that, not millions of people are going to see it. There's, however many people. I would love to.
Okay. Awesome.
So, in order to do that, I'll take you off the tripod because that would be kind of weird. And I got to figure out, I know I had this problem once before on how to flip the camera. There we go. Because when I'm doing a live, that's different. Mm-hmm. Okay, so my easel. And I have a nice studio quality easel, but it has a 4-foot board on it, and that is to catch all of my spray paint. That's kind of my number one reason for using that. I have 3 carts with my art supplies for painting. This is the acrylic cart and acrylic inks and mediums. This one is basically the brush cart and spray paint underneath. And then the oil cart, and the oil one gets pulled out, when I'm doing oils. I've got my computer area. Got a bunch of paintings sitting around that are either finished or unfinished. And I have tons of supplies in all these little carts. And amazingly enough, there's no cats down here tonight. They must have known I was doing this and stayed away.
Yeah, they're like, I don't want to be on video.
This cabinet has a lot of drawing supplies, books, tools, because I'm also into paper crafting and all kinds of other things. So there's stuff like that tucked in there. And then this little area, which is covered in stuff right now, but this cart down here is my oil and acrylic that are in tubes. Mm-hmm. And that cart is my drawing cart. So I have everything broke down. And then over here behind the magic curtain is canvases and things like that. So that's just kind of the quick nutshell tour. I won't get into all the things because that would be a whole nother night.
Of course. What is that? Can I ask you what's that tree painting to your left?
This one?
Other one. Sitting on the white bench thing. It might be to your right. I don't know. That one.
This one?
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm all twisted up in my cord. Everybody dizzy now?
I'm imagining you spinning around with a phone charger wrapped around you.
Yeah. Yes, I was wrapped up in my phone charger. This is an acrylic painting that I did several years ago. And this was before I did any of my like drippy, runny style that I'm currently doing.
It's really beautiful. I like that too. I love
Thank
the
you.
little path and stuff.
This one I'm working on.
Yeah, that one's really pretty too. It's your eagle.
Animals.
Mm-hmm.
My eagle freak. So this girl was finished.
That's really pretty too.
So some of these actually just came home from a show. And, you know, like every good artist, I dabbled with everything. So here's a, you know, pour painting. Mm-hmm. That was my favorite one I ever did.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I got a cloud study back here.
I like that too. I don't know, something about me, I like trees with paths running through them. Like with landscapes. Oh, yes, anytime I can see like a path or something, I really like that.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of those. I just, you know, not currently have not done a lot of landscapes. The one that you showed in your little preview was one that I did recently because I realized like I hadn't really done any landscape type paintings for a long time. So I did that one and like 3 other ones before I kind of ended my art fair season. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I used to do a ton of trees.
That one is really pretty. I like that too.
This one really focused on the roots, and this one's cool because it's got gold leaf. So this sun is all gold leaf.
That's pretty.
And then there's liquid gold, like gold leafing in the tree.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I like tree roots too, so that's something I do.
But as we were talking about earlier, people can probably see this now in some of my work that I am really kind of a little bit of a pop artist, and I really kind of fought that. But, you know, I look at like this one and, you know, this one here, and I'm like, yeah, I can see it.
It's just Wendess art. It's not pop art. It's your art.
But I mean, it does have that pop art feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that.
I like was ready to fight that all the way, you know, personality thing. I was like, now I do it and I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I can see that.
I guess they are right and I need to listen to that. I mean, sometimes it's how it is. Like, my daughter is probably my 18-year-old. She is the one person I can, like, show something to, like, with my art, and she's going to give me a 100% honest opinion. She's not a family member that's going to sugarcoat it. She will flat out tell me, Mom, that doesn't look right, or this needs to go over here, or blah, blah, blah. Like, she will totally be honest with me about things. So,
and you know, we need that. Like, there are points in our life and in our artwork that we need the pats on the back and lots of love and just that, you know, you can do it. And then there are times where you need to grow and you need to hear that's out of proportion, or that's you know, just wonky, whatever.
I think you need both, and we need, you know. You need that.
We do need both.
Yeah, you need that, like, criticism aspect, but you also need to know that you're doing a good job, too, so you keep wanting to push forward, you know? And I don't think sometimes I don't think artists get enough of that, especially as adults. You know, sometimes they get a lot of negativity. I've seen it from other people, you know, about, or
Yeah.
you're just going to do art, you know, like it's not a big deal. And sometimes I even feel that a little bit from people. So I get that. But,
Oh, here's one of the kitties now. Everybody probably wants to
imagine
see
that.
Willow. This is the blue-eyed. Here she is. Willow, come here. Come here. Let everybody see your beautiful face.
Oh, she's so pretty. Yeah, I don't think I've seen her. It was the other one I've seen, I think.
She keeps looking the other direction.
Of
Come
course.
here, over here.
She doesn't want to look at the camera.
No, but I was surprised that both of them actually stayed away as long as they did, because usually they are both hanging out in the studio.
My cat's all over the place. He does what he does. I don't know. He's either sleeping, eating, or in here because he needs to eat or sleep.
Or thinks he needs to eat. This one thinks she needs to eat, and we call her our chunky monkey because she's gotten pretty chubby. And she's on a pretty strict diet, and she's still chunky. And I don't know why. So she's going to be taking a trip to the vet one of these days.
Yeah. Our cat's pretty chunky too. So I can't hold him for very long at all. My daughter can't either because he's so heavy. Like, I don't even know how much he weighs, but yeah, he's not a little guy, that's for sure. But
well, this has been good, Samantha.
Yeah.
I'm realizing we've been talking a long time, and I got a couple things I got to get to before I go to bed, so I should wrap her up.
I was about to say so. I thought the studio would be a good ending. So
yeah, and maybe just a quick, if anybody had any questions or anything, if you don't mind, shoot them my way, you know, and I won't hang on here long, but if there's something really quick I can answer, or Samantha can answer, we can do that. But otherwise, you know, just send us a direct message. And I think, do you have to be friends to get a message?
Yes.
I don't know if
you have to be friends in order to get a message, which is sometimes frustrating, but you know what? You can always put a comment on one of our videos. I'm sure we'll see that, and we can answer it that way too. And I'm going to, if you're okay with it, I'm going to start posting these on my YouTube channel, because I just started a YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah.
So that way there's a way for people to watch if they weren't able to join. So
that's a great idea, because I thought, well, it'd be fun to be able to move it, you know, but it's like, well, the only way I've done that onto my TikTok is done it into time lapse. Well,
it's a little bit different when you're talking. Yeah. Well,
like a chipmunk interview real quick. Yeah, I do have a YouTube as well.
Perfect. Yeah.
This art. So
okay. So yeah,
if you haven't liked me there, I don't know if we're friends on subscribed or anything on YouTube.
But
so I'm gonna do that, because if you're new there,
I'm gonna have to add you on. Like, I just kind of started throwing stuff up on there, but I haven't done much with it yet. So so I'll follow you. So if you want to watch this, or you're just coming in at the end, I'm going to put it up on my YouTube channel. Wendess Art is also on YouTube. So she'll probably put it up on there too.
And I believe that's Wendess Studio, I think.
Okay.
On my YouTube.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know what
my YouTube.
It's definitely Wendess.
Okay. Is your YouTube link in your bio? Like, I don't know what you have for your bio. I can't remember.
I don't think so.
Okay. I think
it just has my website.
Okay. I have that Beacons page.
Okay. You have what?
I have that Beacons page, so you can list multiple things. It's free. It's totally free, and you can list multiple, like, social medias or websites on there. So I have my YouTube in there. So you can go in there and click on my YouTube channel. And also make sure to go follow her on TikTok. That way you can kind of keep up with her art because it's really beautiful and it's really amazing seeing from start to finish too. So, thank you so much for doing this and being one of my very first
Thank you,
ones.
Samantha.
So, I had.
I really appreciate the opportunity to get to know you better in
Oh,
this
you're
chat,
welcome.
and I appreciate that you're doing this. It's pretty cool.
You're very welcome. I enjoy it, and it gives me a way to talk
And
to other
to
artists.
anybody else watching, make sure you check out Samantha's page too,
Thank
because
you.
she does a lot of cool things, and she's got a lot of cute videos of her dog, which is awesome. I love your dog. My husband and I want to get a dog. We want to get an Aussie, but
They're
we
so great.
still live in town, and we're going in the next probably year, be moving to the country. And when we move to the country, that'll be the time to get the dog.
Yeah, I definitely
Not
agree
right
with
now.
that because so we had to move from a house to an apartment, and apartment is not good for her. She's too anxiety and like she's very protective. Like, this is my yard, what are you doing in it? You're too close to our house, kind of thing. But so super
Yeah.
smart, sweet, great dogs. I love them. So well, you have a good rest of your night, Wendy.
You too. Thanks,
You're
Samantha.
welcome, and
Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight.
yep, thank you everybody for joining me. We really appreciate it. And like I said, go to the YouTube channel and you can see this if you missed any.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Samantha.
Bye.